One of the downsides to selling on Amazon is that this is a cash-intensive business. That's just a fact. It takes a lot of cash, especially if you're successful, because you're constantly trying to get ahead of things and buy more inventory to fuel this flywheel. So cash flow is one of the most important things you can wrap your head around and really truly understand. And cash flow is probably the thing that kills more Amazon businesses than anything else. Product selection probably be number one. People get a product that's in a too competitive market or they don't understand their margins. But cash flow is the next thing that probably just it derails more people than necessary. It's just because they mismanage it. If you mismanage cash flow, good luck. This is not going to work. When I first started, I actually mismanaged the cash flow on one of my accounts, and it tanked it. And I ended up having to come out of my pocket and pay some stuff. So just because I didn't pay attention to it like I should have. So I just want to give you a few tips on ways to actually improve your cash flow so you can hold on to your cash as long as possible and deploy it in the best way possible. Now, one of the ways is to minimize your inventory. Don't overorder your inventory. Now, typically you want to have about 30 days worth of inventory sitting in Amazon. And as a new seller, Amazon does have some limits on how much inventory you can send in. In the old days, you could pretty much send in whatever you wanted. But now you're limited to, as of right now, to about 1,000 units that you can send in to Amazon. And that's 1,000 units across multiple SKUs. So if you have 3 different items, you're going to have 1,000 total of all 3 of those added up. Now that number can grow over time as you start to sell. As you become a more experienced seller, that number will change. But starting out is typically around 1,000 units that you're allowed to send in. So that'll constrain you a little bit. But you got to make sure that you pick products that you're not going to run out of stock very fast on either with that thousand limit. But ordering too much inventory can really devastate you. I mean, maybe if you have a hot selling product that's selling, say 50 a day, that's 1,500 a month. That 1,000 limit, you're going to be sending in multiple times a month. And maybe Amazon won't let you send in all 1,500 right away. So you're going to have to stage it at like a 3PL. You're going to have to maybe order 4,000 or 5,000, send it into a 3PL, an outside warehouse, and every few weeks they send some more into Amazon so that you can stay in stock. And that's okay, but don't get too greedy and overorder your inventory. That can tie up too much of your cash too easily. But at the same time, you don't want to order too little, because then if you run out of stock, then you're going to be in a situation where you're basically starting over when you come back into stock. Another thing is your MOQs, your minimum order quantities. When you contact the factories, they're going to tell you this is the minimum number you can order to get this certain price. Typically, the more you order, the lower the price goes. But you can negotiate those. Sometimes a factory will say, well, we won't do business with you unless you order 3,000 units. That's our MOQ. And really, you only need 1,000. So negotiate with them and say, hey, look, I want to grow with you. I want you to be my factory, but I'm just getting started, so I just need 1,000 initially. And maybe they'll charge you a little bit extra for that, and that's okay. But get them to negotiate with that and do that. And if they won't, find a different factory that'll work with you. Another thing you can do is negotiate your payment terms. Typically, you have to put about 30% down when you place an order with a factory, and the other 70% you pay when it's ready to ship. Sometimes you can negotiate that to 20% down and 80% when it ships. In some cases, once you have a relationship with the factory, you can actually get that to 0% down and maybe 100% when it ships, or maybe 0% down and 20% when it ships and 80% when it arrives to the port in Los Angeles, or something like that. Anything you can do along those lines can help you. And now, you may not be able to do that on your very first order, but once you place that first order and you can make some projections and you can show your supplier, here's a projection of what I'm thinking to do for the next year, perhaps they'll work with you. Like, yeah, we want to grow with you. Let's be partners in this, and they'll help you on the cash flow. That can be very, very important. Another thing is you can do to increase your cash flow. The fourth thing you can do is actually increase your price. Sometimes everybody thinks everything is price based on Amazon, but if you've got a good listing with good photos and you've done a good video and you do a good job with your A+ content, sometimes you can raise your price and you can test it. Test raising it $1 or $2 and see how that does. Yes, you might actually sell a little bit less, but you actually might make a little bit more. Sometimes selling less actually makes you more money than selling for a less price and selling more units. So you just do some testing on that and see if that can help you on your cash flow. Another thing you can do is watch your ad spend. That's whether that's on Amazon or whether that's on Facebook. Those things can get out of hand really fast, and so you got to keep a close eye on that. We're going to talk about PPC and also social media advertising in some later modules. But PPC on Amazon, usually you'll hear a word bantered around called ACOS, ACOS. Stands for Advertising Cost of Sale. And that's a number that a lot of people focus on, and they try to get that down as low as possible. And I don't focus on ACOS. I focus on something called TACOS, or put a T in front of it, TACOS, Total Advertising Cost of Sale. And the difference is ACOS is based on just the sales generated from your advertising spend, versus TACOS, you take that same advertising spend and you allocate it against all your sales, including sales that you didn't have to advertise to get. Those are called organic sales that just come naturally in the search. You didn't have to pay to have an ad spot. And that's what I look at. But I like to keep that around 10% over time. When you first launch, that number could be 50 or 100%. But over time, I'd like to get that down to about around 10%. So that's a thing that you got to keep an eye out as well. Also, watch your business expenses. Make sure you don't have unnecessary software. There's a lot of software tools out there, a lot of cool little bells and whistles, but Helium 10 has pretty much everything you need. You might need one or two other tools depending on what you're doing, but for the most part, Helium 10 has everything you need. You don't need a Helium 10 and there's some of their other competitors that are out there. They all do similar things, but Helium 10 actually does more. And you want to, even though sometimes the results might be different, and when you're looking at different tools because they're using different estimating algorithms, if you're using the same tool, everything's going to be consistent, and it's going to be all relative. So that's very important. So watch your business expenses. Don't go too crazy on spending on, especially on software. That's where people can it can start adding up really, really fast. Another thing you can do is try to use other people's money whenever possible. Debt is not always bad. Some debt is not good, but the right kind of debt can be bad. So don't be afraid to go into debt, but it needs to be the right kind of debt. Be careful giving away, doing anything that could affect you personally. Don't take out a second mortgage on your house to do your Amazon business. Not unless you have a proven product that you know is working. Don't do that in the beginning. Don't take on anything that's going to potentially put you at a greater risk. Sometimes giving away equity can be a good thing. If you got a buddy that has some extra cash laying around, say, hey, look, if you invest in my Amazon business, I'll give you 10%. You don't have to do anything. Just invest. Take on an equity partner that's a silent partner. Sometimes that can work, and they just get a reward. You can even make it to where they don't get anything until you sell the company, or something along those lines. Or you guarantee to pay them back, and then they get a lower percentage if you pay them back in a faster amount of time. There's all kinds of ways you can negotiate that. Another thing is you can lease assets. So if you are setting up an office for some reason, maybe don't buy your furniture, maybe lease it instead. If you needed a vehicle for some reason, lease that instead, because there's tax advantages oftentimes, and you can write those off. And so leasing sometimes in business can be more advantageous than buying. Another thing is increase your sales. If you increase your sales by selling more, that's going to affect your cash flow. So that's by doing different promotions. That's by doing different ranking things, focusing on different keywords. Increasing sales can be a great way to increase your cash flow. Another thing that you need to remember is traditional banks really don't like e-commerce businesses. So if you need some cash and you're just at a wit's end and you're like, let me go to my local bank, they're probably not going to do it unless you qualify for like an SBA loan or something like that. And that usually you need to be in a business for a little while to actually get that. They're probably not going to do that. You want to steer clear of any of these merchant cash advance type of people that take really high rates. There are companies out there like Blue Line and On Deck and Lending Tree and even Amazon Lending that will, after a period of time, will actually loan you money. But Helium 10 has Alta, which is probably one of the best tools that you can use to actually, if you need some cash. Now you're going to have to be in business usually for 6 months before Alta will actually lend you money. Sometimes they'll make an exception at 3 months, but usually it requires 6 months of being in business before they'll actually loan you some money. And then Alta also will allow you to, once you're up and running, if Amazon's paying you every 2 weeks and you need the cash quicker, Alta will do daily advances. It's a small fee, like a 1-2% fee, but Alta will actually, you can take that money and get it quicker. And so you don't have to wait for that Amazon payday. So that's another thing that can help you sometimes in your cash flow. If you got a big balance built up in your Amazon account and you need to pay your factory, to use Alta, and for a 1 or 2% fee, you'll have that cash usually within 24 hours. So another thing you can consider is using sites like Indiegogo or Kickstarter. Those are crowdsourcing sites where if you have a brand new product concept, you might be able to raise some money there, but that's a whole different business model and takes a special skill set. Most of those actually fail. So if you're going to go that route, just be careful, make sure you do your homework, but they can be a good way to do it. Another great resource is a book called Profit First for E-commerce. And we have a guest that's going to be coming on in one of the modules and speaking to you about this, but you can go on Amazon and get this book, and it's a really good book that will show you how to organize all your bank accounts, how to organize all your expenses to make sure that you get to take some money out of your business as you grow your business. And it's a really good book to take a look at, so I would encourage you to go download that or buy that on Amazon, and then make sure you pay attention to the module here in the course where we talk about that. Now, if you do need to get a loan, there's a few criteria that most lenders are going to look at that you just need to be aware of. Number one is you usually need at least 3 months of being in business before you can get a loan. Sometimes it's 6, sometimes it's a year, it depends on the amount of the loan, but typically 3 months is the bare minimum. You're also going to need a credit score, personal credit score in the U.S. of probably 620 or higher to qualify for most loans. And you're going to need to be a U.S. citizen to get a loan in the United States in most cases. You got to make sure you don't have any negative stuff, no liens or no recent bankruptcies or anything. Some of the lenders will look at your average bank balance, so you want to make sure you keep a pretty healthy bank balance, ideally in the 5 or 6 figures in your account. Depending on the amount, if you're going over $125,000 on a loan, they'll probably want a couple years worth of tax returns and additional bank statements. So those are some things you got to make sure you have in line if you're going to actually try to apply from a loan from a traditional lender. I would avoid doing any kind of personal guarantees if at all possible. You might have to do that if it's your rich uncle or your buddy. They may want a personal guarantee, but whenever you can, try to avoid doing any personal guarantees, and don't put anything at risk that you don't want to lose. Another way to actually generate some money is by credit cards. Now, most of your suppliers won't take a credit card as payment, but there are ways to actually do that. There are a lot of credit cards where you can even get a cash advance on for a low rate or a one-time 3% fee, which can be really good. But if you have good credit, you can go to Bankrate.com in the U.S., and there's a lot of credit cards there that have a 0% interest rate that you can actually get. Sometimes a $10,000, $20,000, $50,000 line of credit, and you can use those if you need to as well to help get your business going. So I hope this has helped you understand the cash flow a little bit and give you a few little tips and tricks on how to generate some cash if you need to. And we'll see you in the next module.